Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Investing Bros Special Edition live show. Over the last, I would say, 12 hours, there's been a lot of big updates to the crypto market, to the stock market, a lot of things that will have an impact on the future price action. I'm going to go ahead and spoil it, though, for you. It's not necessarily overwhelmingly bullish or overwhelmingly bearish. We will cover all the details you need to be aware of. In the video, we will talk about last night's great American discussion. There's some words and some names that Google and YouTube really don't want us to say. So we're going to have to dance delicately around the subject, but we will be addressing last night's great American discussion. Also, some key data points coming out this morning. What does it mean for your crypto? What does it mean for the stock market? We'll have that conversation and more. Normally, these morning shows, we keep it to around 20 minutes, but because we're very interested in seeing how the stock market opens after last night's events and these morning's data, we actually will be going longer today, over a half hour, to watch how stocks open. But of course, we'll give you more recap later today at 3 p.m. for our normal afternoon show. So make sure you watch this show to the very end. Come back this afternoon to get final analysis. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of what's happening, you got to smash the like. If you're new, you got to hit subscribe, and we got to roll that intro. What is going on, T-Shroom? Now, we're going to have to take our sweet time here because, again, we're going to want to go a little bit longer here. So let me start off by asking you, how are you feeling this morning? How are you doing?
Well, Tim, I stayed up late last night, like probably a lot of people did, watching videos, watching reactions to the great American discussion. And man, this is very stimulating, right? I study a lot of these American happenings, and it's very interesting to see it all kind of come to a head and big shifts to happen all at once. So I'm feeling a little bit sleepy, but I've got my hydration/energy right here. And so we're ready to rock and roll. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm actually doing well. I'm doing well, despite the fact that I think that we've missed an amazing opportunity here. There was a lot of things that have happened over the last 12 hours that I thought could have gone a little bit more bullishly as a whole. But despite that, they're not bearish. I still think there's a bright future for crypto and the markets. And again, we're going to discuss that a lot more. Let me set the stage. I said it in the intro. Let me reiterate here. Just so you guys are kind of tracking with us. We don't want to lose our channel. We don't want to be demonetized. There are some rules that YouTube and Google, which of course houses this show, they don't want us saying certain things. So you will hear us refer to an orange man. You'll hear us refer to a sleepy man. And to my acknowledgement, I don't think that they're not going to want us to say the word Kennedy. I could be wrong. We'll find out later. But I think we can use the word Kennedy. I'm not going to say a word that starts with a D and ends with an E. That is also another way of saying a great American discussion. So stick with us through the colloquialisms as we kind of navigate what happened last night. We only like to go super political when it has a major impact on the future price of cryptocurrency. We don't like talking about politics just for politics' sake. Honestly, that is a very upsetting conversation to have whenever you have it. But when it involves crypto, when it involves the future of how those things are going, it's a conversation we have to have. But before we do get into that conversation, let's just check out the markets as a whole this morning, T-Shroom. We're getting a little ad there from Nike. I want to make sure I clarify something. Yesterday on the show, there was remember the advertisement, T-Shroom, for the ice baths? And I said, oh, boycott the ice baths until someone got upset in the comments. Said that, oh, this is why I'm not watching this show, because you guys are clearly just trying to monetize. I want to clarify something, guys. Yes, we have some sponsors. That is the game. That's how we continue to bring you guys content. When I say boycott a product because they're not paying us, I would like to think that most of you understand the joke there. But in case you didn't, don't boycott ice baths unless they pay us. In fact, ice baths are probably not going to pay us. It's not really probably the main attraction to our channel. I just want to make sure you guys understand. We kid here. We joke.
Unless it is.
I had to clarify.
If you would spend more than $700 on a ice plunge, put a 1 in the chat.
Let's check out the fear and greed index. After being back down to 40 yesterday, this number did come out last night about an hour before the American conversation between Orange Man and Sleepy Man, and it shot back up to 47. My thoughts is probably anticipation. The market probably got a little more bullish, anticipating that conversation would yield better results, I guess was one way to put it. It's back up at 47, back up into neutral, but as a whole, still sitting in a good spot. What I think could be a long-term perspective of the bottoming out of Bitcoin's pullback. That is still a positive sign that I am watching. But as I said, we're not necessarily seeing overwhelmingly bullish or bearish consequences here. Akash is still bullish here in the last 24 hours. DOT is still bullish. Didn't mean to click on you there. AVAX is bullish. Link is bullish, but you'll see a sea of red and a sea of green. That right here, just looking at the bubbles, communicates what I kind of indicated earlier. What we have had happen in the last 12 hours has not been overwhelmingly bullish or bearish. Before we keep moving on, let's cover the data that came out this morning, which was one of the reasons why we wanted to go live. It was covering some major economic data. T-Shroom, go ahead and take us over into that, and what are the details that people need to know about that happened at 8:30 this morning?
Yep, absolutely. Well, I got it right here for you, Tim. Core PCEs, kind of the big one. This is the one a lot of people care about month over month. 0.1% was the actual print. Consensus was 0.1. Forecast was the same. Previous was 0.3. This is good. This is generally leans bullish, but it's about as down the middle as you can get. I think the most bullish aspect of it is that it came in lower than the previous, right? But that was what was already forecasted, so that was more than likely baked in. Moving on down the line here, personal income month over month came in slightly higher, right, than consensus and forecast, and markedly higher than previous, but only by 0.1% did it exceed the consensus and forecast. So again, bullish, but only slightly so. And then personal spending, right, actually came in under consensus and forecast, right? So that's not that great. People are less. The velocity of money is slightly lower from a consumer standpoint. And then PCE price index month over month, basically, met except came in under slightly for the forecast. And then PCE, that would be a positive thing. So it beat all of this. You want PCE to be as low as possible. And then PCE index year over year came in at forecast as well. So, it's hard to be any more right down the middle than these data prints here. Now, the next reference resource here, the takeaway is down the middle, right? But the next,
let me go through this real quick. I just want to make sure people understand. Let's go through those numbers and explain very briefly. So, core PCE coming in at 0.1% as expected. This is bullish, like T-Shroom said. The PCE number got lower, but because it didn't get lower than expected, I want people to keep in mind. Right now, we're watching data points. You and I both know things are expensive. It's very hard to borrow money. We are looking for the interest rates to start going to the downside. So what data points are going to cause Jerome Powell and the Fed to want to lower those interest rates? Pull that list back up there, T-Shroom. Let's go through it slowly. That number, it's not negative, but it was just as expected, so it's not necessarily overwhelmingly bullish. When you look at personal income being a little bit higher than expected, you actually could see that, even though it's not majorly bearish, you could see the fact that people are making more money potentially be a sign that the economy is not in a place that necessarily needs to have the rate cuts because they have control of inflation and people are getting higher money. So that's not going to be a win here for crypto prices. Personal spending going down actually is a slight win. So these ones, the income and the spending almost canceling each other out because one shows a sign of economic strength, the other shows a sign of potential economic weakness, meaning maybe the Jerome Powell sees it and say, all right, we are doing this. He wanted personal spending to go down. He wanted job loss to kind of increase and personal spending to be a sign of that. So we have a cancel out there. That's neutral. PCE month over month, like T-Shroom said, about neutral. It's what we expected. And then same thing with year over year. It came out lower than last month's year over year. That's good long term, but it was what we expected at 2.6. So consequently, and I know we're about to go to the next data point. Let's just show the chart here. As a whole, like if we were to go, let's go to the hourly chart. this has been a very neutral response to these data points. Ultimately, we rallied up here, back towards 61, where we have some resistance, or sorry, 61,800, where we have a nice bearish order block on the hourly chart. We've then been finding support on a bullish smart trail here. So this is kind of showing the markets did not think that anything really changed. This is not overwhelmingly bullish. This is not overwhelmingly bearish. Ultimately, what we now need to wait for is more response from the Fed about what their plan is. And I don't know, T-Shirt, were you planning on bringing up the Fed plans at this point? Is that the next thing we're going through?
Nope, I would never do that.
Okay, go into yours, and then we'll go into the Fed.
Just kidding. I've got the plans for the Fed right here. Tim, come on now.
There we go.
We're having fun.
Listen, we're not allowed to joke on this show, is what I'm understanding from comments.
That's right.
So I just assumed everything you say is deadly serious.
Right. You got a question? Ask Google. That's what I'd say. Google, an excellent resource for the modern age. July 30th through the 31st is the next Fed decision. This is the date that matters, right? This will be at Bitcoin Nashville. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hope you join us. There is still tickets available. Link in the description. But around that time, the Fed, the FOMC, old Jerome, will be gathering around with the other geniuses over there at the Federal Reserve to make a decision on whether or not to cut, to pause, or to hike potentially. So more than likely, we're expecting a cut. I'm sorry, we're expecting a pause. More than likely, the FOMC will pause. And given this data print that we got today, that is unlikely to change. I think my position is that everything here kind of cancels everything out, each other out, to say that it gives an easy win for Jerome to get up there and on the press briefing and say we're not seeing the data that we need to see in order to induce cuts quickly. What would they need to see? They would need to see PCE going much lower, right? They would need to see personal income going much higher, right? They would need to see personal spending going much higher, right? They would need to see things that are showing inflationary tendencies, inflationary effects, and first of all, everything pretty much beat. Pretty much everything met within a 0.1% percentage point standard deviation. And
let me make sure. I don't know if you said this on accident or not. I would say the personal income is also something that needs to go down. They don't want that number to be too high. That personal income going high is a sign of economic prosperity. And if the economy is doing well, despite high interest rates, why would we lower them? So both income and spending should go down to incentivize the Fed that they need to cut rates to re-spark some economic growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully there was more clarity than confusion there. But overall, going to be having the decision here, the next decision, July 30th, 31st, which is important because it's not this week. It's not next week, right? It's a ways off. It's a few news cycles away from today in crypto and in mainstream. So that's something to consider for your portfolio and how you're trading. Right now, this PCE is not going to be, more than likely, this is not going to be the deciding factor come July. There's going to be other things that will have happened. So that will be convincing the market, I should say. The Fed probably will be making a decision based on this data print and any other data prints that come between now and then, jobs numbers, mortgage rates, different things like that. So
let's take
Tim,
a look here.
What is the CME? What is the CME telling us, Tim?
Let's look at the CME right now. So context here. Jerome Powell at the last Fed meeting kind of implied we should only see one rate cut, right? So currently we're at 525 to 550. July is saying there's an 89% chance we're going to stay paused in July. Not surprising here. The thought, though, is at the end of December, we should only be at 500 to 525, right? So keep that in mind as we go through this. Right now, the CME is still pricing in the first rate cut with more than, if there's 32% saying we're going to stay paused and the rest is saying a cut, that obviously mathematically is going to put us somewhere around 68% probability that we get at least one rate cut here in September. All right, so that right there is still saying that we're bullish, that we're going to have cuts early. If we get one in September, at that point, they're still saying by November, we've only done one rate cut. But of course, the probability has increased from 68 all the way up to about 79% chance of at least one cut. But you're going to see here in December, CME is actually saying right now, there is a greater than 50% chance that we get at least 2 cuts. Some saying 3, some saying 4. That's not a lot of them, but overwhelmingly, the highest prediction is that in December, we will have made 2 rate cuts down to 475 to 500. This is lower than what Jerome Powell and the Fed have said. The problem is this was the same prediction we made on that day. So until we see, probably, I would say this is what we need to see to potentially have a more bullish feeling about what crypto is going to do. If we can get the 3 rate cuts down to 450 to 475, if we can in the next couple of weeks or months see an increase in the probability of 3 rate cuts by December, that would be a bullish catalyst that the market is not pricing in right now and could lead to large gains in the markets. Now, I already did a little bit of charting here. Let's do a little bit of on the charts discussion, but then we got to get into the great American conversation. Again, do we love talking about politics here on the channel? No, we love talking about crypto and markets. The problem is when politics get involved, we have to discuss them. So that's what's going to happen here. Let's come out in a zoomed in perspective. We continue, turn off Lux, I'll go for just a second. We continue to wrestle with this former level of support, this green line right here. We continue to use it as resistance. This isn't overwhelmingly bearish just yet, but it's not sparking necessarily joy either. I'm going to tell you guys, I tell you guys when I'm right, I tell you when I'm wrong. I tell you when I predict things correctly, and I tell you when I predict things incorrectly. I'm going to tell you I was wrong in my prediction here. I honestly thought between all of the data that has come out in the last 24 hours, between the things like the American conversation that happened last night, the data points that came out yesterday morning and this morning, I thought there would be a catalyst that could send Bitcoin price at least back up to this serious level of resistance at 67,000 by this weekend. And while technically we still could, the fact that all of those data points, all of those key decisions have happened now, and we're still just hovering right above 61,000, I'm going to go ahead and say, guys, I predicted that one wrong. That is my bad. I got to move forward, though. I got to keep going and seeing what happens next. At this point, I'm not, as I told you earlier, I'm not feeling an overwhelming amount of bearishness because nothing says we have to go down. So anyone saying, oh, does this mean 55K is back in the cards? Not necessarily. We're still sitting, as much as we're not getting bullish support, we're still sitting on a large amount of support on multiple timeframes. We're still seeing the RSI and the oscillators suggesting that we really should start moving to the upside. You can see here the money flow started flowing positively. Today, it's moving a little sideways. It's waiting for that confirmation to get officially above that bearish threshold. But this is still an overwhelmingly bullish chart. But what does this mean? If I'm wrong about this bullish catalyst that just happened, not sending us to the upside, this takes me back to something that I have to keep falling back to, a prediction I made way back in March that this one has not been wrong. I told you guys back in March, do not be surprised to see a fall into the halving event that happened back here around April 19th, April 20th. We fell into it, just like I said, and I told you guys historically, we don't usually have massive crashes, but we don't have massive rallies for several months after the halving event. And I told you guys, I drew this golden box, and I said, do not be surprised if we don't see a new high in Bitcoin until August or September of this year. Now, there's been some bullish things that have happened. There's been some stories that have come out. There's been some sentiment that's been released that gave me pause at times to say, hey, maybe I was wrong. Maybe we can see Bitcoin get to a new all-time high, possibly in July. But what I'm seeing right now, we did beat the options expiry this morning. That's a bullish sign. Being above 55,000, that's a bullish sign. But with them last night not discussing crypto one bit whatsoever, and we'll get to more conversation about that in a second, the fact that the data points really didn't do anything special as far as telling us what the economy looks like. We don't see an overwhelming amount of positivity or negativity. So at the moment, no one's going to be baking in more bullishness or more bearishness. This continues to make me think, if we go back to my screen here, T-Shroom, this probability of not seeing a new high for Bitcoin until late August, early September, that probably is right now the most likely outcome for a new high on Bitcoin. That doesn't stop the long-term probabilities that I think Bitcoin starts to push closer to 200,000 before the end of 2025, but it does delay when that bullishness will happen. And I can tell you now what that's going to cause. Hopefully everyone watching on Investing Bros, you guys stay locked in. You're prepared for the long, boring summer. You guys should be good to go. But there are millions of people worldwide who, when nothing happens in Bitcoin or crypto and they're not seeing substantial gains because they want to make money really fast, sometimes they get bored and they capitulate and say, I'll come back in later when things get exciting. The problem is they would be selling right now to BlackRock, to Fidelity, to several large institutions who see the long-term future, and they won't come back in until Bitcoin is probably well over $100,000, in which case the majority of the gains in crypto have already played out. So that's my fear right now, that despite I'm being patient, T. Shroom's being patient, I think a lot of you guys are being patient. I am concerned about millions of other retail investors who are going to miss out on the opportunity of a lifetime simply because they don't have the willpower and patience to hold through the boring times. It's so easy to consume crypto content when something really bullish or really bearish is happening. Views are always crazy high. People are always locked in trying to find out what's going on. But the problem is most people during boring phases, and I think that we've been in one, and I think we're going to continue to be in one for probably another 2 months or so, people check out, sometimes even capitulate, and it's a massive mistake. So I urge you guys, despite the temptation to get distracted and maybe go somewhere else, stay locked in on crypto, because this is the best time to be paying attention to what the long-term future looks like. With that said, again, we have about 10 minutes here until we're going to get our opening to the stock market. I'm very interested in what's happening. Let's check a look really quickly before we jump into the conversation about what happened last night. Let's take a look at what's happening right now in the stock market, T-Shroom. We do have some temporarily positive things. Let's look at the S&P 500 here. We do see the pre-market actually opening up a considerable amount higher than where we closed last night. We're actually going to be opening roughly 0.16% higher. So that's potentially a positive move right there. Gold, which is actually active right now, despite the fact that crypto is kind of moving more neutral, gold actually has been responding pretty positively this morning, even with the data not necessarily coming out overwhelmingly bullish or bearish. So these are things that I do think are positive, but we do want to stick around until after 9:30 to decide, what's the day gonna look like based off the news. Quick shout out to our super chat. Joseph Gunter gave $5 saying, Bitcoin dominance and total 3 falling. I believe alt season is coming sooner this cycle. I don't think dominance will hit 60% this cycle. I enjoy the show every day. First of all, Joseph, thank you so much for coming in here. And it's possible. I've predicted I don't think that altcoin season, if we stay on our normal cycle, should happen until maybe November or December of this year. I do know that Bitcoin dominance is falling, and you're right, that's happening, but that's called volatility. And right now, this is the Bitcoin dominance chart he's referencing. Is Bitcoin dominance down from where it was back on the 18th? Absolutely it is. But where's it coming back down to? It's coming back down to a very strong level of support that we've now touched several times after using the same level as resistance for several months. So if we start to lose 54% on the Bitcoin.D chart over on TradingView, yeah, let's start to have the conversation about altcoin season coming into play. But I still believe, based off of previous ways we've kind of responded in past bull markets, I still think we have another good leg to the upside with Bitcoin dominance through the summer and most of the fall. It will see Bitcoin dominance fall off a cliff that will mark altcoin season. It won't be a very slow, gradual fall. It will be a very, very big rally followed by a big, big fall to the downside. So that's not really what I'm seeing in play at the moment. I'll let you know if that changes, but good call out right there. Super chat from Sathya R. I don't know if I said that correctly. Didn't say anything, but said 1. Thank you so much. I'll say 2. Back to you. T-Shroom, let's get into conversation here. You can go back to our split screen here. Let's talk about the great conversation last night. The first disappointment I had, and again, this is another area. I was wrong about this as well. I thought it would be a great opportunity, especially for Sleepy Man's campaign, to bring up his recent positivity on crypto. It's a topic that I do think a lot of people in America care about. It's one that both of them recently have claimed to be extremely bullish on. It didn't even come into conversation. That was disappointing to me. What were your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean the conversation took a very traditional route, talking about all of the kind of issues that are they're very common to the American electorate. Immigration seemed to be the one that Orange Man hammered on again and again and again, because that is one of the biggest failures of the current administration. That and bringing back the Afghanistan debacle, terror show of leaving millions and millions of dollars of military equipment in Afghanistan. I mean, that was the one for me that was really, really bad. All of that for the average American greatly overshadows crypto, which we talk about it day in and day out, but it is a very small niche still to the average person in the United States who really cares about, oh my gosh, these tomatoes are getting so much more expensive. Oh my gosh, beef is so much more expensive. Gasoline is slightly more expensive, right? But childcare, insanely more expensive. That one was one that also didn't get talked about, which I'm sure some people got very frustrated about that one.
They brought it up, but they didn't actually give any solutions.
Yeah.
So it's like both of them skirted the issue. I think you're right there. Yeah. I know people who have complained more recently about high. I've never had to pay for childcare, right? So I've heard stories, I've heard numbers. I've never had to experience it myself, but I've heard it's a lot of pain. Kind of moving on with more thoughts here, because we only have a couple more minutes before we get into the stock market. I think the other thing, and it does not matter. Are you a registered Democrat? Are you a registered Republican? Are you a moderate? Are you a libertarian? I think last night, no matter who you think you're voting for already, I probably shouldn't have used the V word right there. Who matter you're selecting come November, that was a sad and very hard conversation to watch last night. And I'll tell you why. There might be some people right now who maybe are rejoicing at Sleepy Man's lack of ability to stay on point, the bumbling and mumbling that went on. I'll tell you this right now. Like him or hate him, he is the leader of America for at least the next 6 to 7 months, because let's say he one way or another, whether the Democrats find a replacement for him, which is a whole nother conversation that we'll have to get into maybe later this afternoon, or whether a Republican wins, whether Orange Man wins, Sleepy Man is still the president for the next 6 months. Right now, I do believe that there are world leaders that do not like the United States, that see us as a threat to what they want to accomplish, who are licking their lips based off of what they saw from the leader of the United States. And I'm telling you now, there's people probably rejoicing that it looks like this should be a landslide victory for Orange Man. You can have that thought, but I'm very worried about what this means for the United States over the next 6 months. Because again, no matter whoever wins in November, we still have 6 more months of Sleepy Man in office. And that was very concerning to watch. And I'll say this as well, like, you can say you want to vote for one or the other. I don't wish harm or pain or suffering on any person, no matter who they are and what their beliefs are about how politics should work. So even that, like, there was a little bit of like pain in my soul just watching Sleepy Man be there. You saw that statement said over and over again on social media. This is elder abuse, and it's kind of become a cliche statement, as almost like a insult. But that statement, I believe, is actually true. Like, there's an element of how, if you have any love in your heart for Sleepy Man and you're close to him, you're a family member, you're on his staff, how do you put him out on that stage in that condition? It was extremely sad, extremely heartbreaking, no matter which way you lean politically.
Yeah. I think now more than ever, I think Americans are kind of zooming out and thinking, what are some alternatives to this freaking system that we have here? Yeah. The founding fathers had an excellent progression in what was, monarchies, into, feudalism, into, the Magna Carta. And then we have what we have that brought us to today, right? But now it's like, okay, well, now we have technologies like blockchain. We have technologies like Bitcoin that are trustless. We've had to trust these systems. Is it maybe time to move on? I think definitely not every American is thinking in that way, but I think a lot of very smart tech bros, a lot of Silicon Valley types, and a lot of international thinkers are looking at the United States and other countries that have similar confusion and chaos and despair running through the heart of their political systems, and they're thinking reform. They're thinking radical reform. Yeah. So that's kind of what I think you can allow yourself to do, is zoom out, think about the bigger picture. Uniparty definitely comes to mind here. That there's really kind of an illusion that there's really a difference between the two parties. I think that I still think that there is on specific issues, but I think probably 80% of the issues, it's an illusion that they actually disagree. It's just smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll get here. This is a slight different here. Make sure you guys are following us over on Twitter. Share my screen here. I'm going to just reiterate what I put over on an X. Sometimes I say Twitter, and it's formerly Twitter now. It's
and
called
you'd
X.
be wrong.
These are wrapping up kind of my thoughts here, and we're literally about a minute away from seeing how the stock market opens. But these are my morning after debate thoughts, and I'm not supposed to say the D word. Darn it!
Come on, Tim.
But this kind of wraps it up. I think this wraps up. Gosh, this wraps up the thoughts of probably a lot of Americans. At least my first 3 points. You might disagree with me on the last one. The first one is Americans deserve better. If you enjoyed watching last night, that is not what we need in America. Whether you are a registered Republican, a registered Democrat, or independent, it's best when we have a great option of candidates. When you have 2 or 3, hopefully we get to a place where we have 3, where you have 2 strong individuals that actually both could offer value, that's a good thing. That brings healthy conversation, healthy choice. That's not what we saw last night. Americans deserve better than what we saw on the stage last night. That leads me to the second one. Political reform is drastically needed. I mean, for just a plethora of reasons. The joking thought I came away with is, of course, from here on out, I think all debates should be held on a golf course after the candidates weigh in. That was a nice, humorous breakup to what was a disaster last night on the stage. But here's what I walk away. This is probably my biggest takeaway. And you guys, there might be some of you disagree. There's going to be some of you agree. Ultimately, this is what allows me to keep moving forward with confidence and joy and hope in my life, is that no matter who the president of the United States is, Jesus still sits on the throne.
Amen.
You might not believe that. That's okay. For me to feel happy and positive and joyful, it matters where my hope is planted. My hope is not planted in the president of the United States. My hope is not planted in who controls policy in the United States. My hope, as much as I love cryptocurrency, isn't even in the future of cryptocurrency to solve the many political problems of the United States. My hope is in Jesus, and he is undefeated. He's sitting on the throne, and there's nothing that can take him out. So if there's any reason to be joyful today, that's the one that we do have. It is 9:31 here, T-Shroom. Let's go check out what's happening in the stock market. You take it out as well. I'm going to turn on my chart. Let's start off with the S&P 500. What is it doing this morning? Let's go ahead and update it here. We'll go to like the 1 hour chart. Like we said, opened up high. It is correcting here a little bit. But as we said, it did open up here a little bit higher than yesterday's close. I switched to a different S&P. So this one, instead of being in like the hundreds, we closed yesterday roughly around 54.83. Opened this morning, actually opened up pretty high here at 54.90. We have come down a little bit, but you guys can see here, we're starting to build on the 1 hour chart, that bearish wick. So a quick correction and now a boost to the upside here. We keep moving on. Let's check out is the Dow Jones. Dow Jones is responding bullishly here this morning. NASDAQ, let's see what it's doing. Kind of the same as the S&P 500. So again, overwhelmingly kind of bullish so far to the open of the stock market. Gold, after being somewhat positive, actually right now is falling as the markets do open. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. You guys can see here on the hourly chart, creating, taking out all the wicks that are below here. Let's see what else we want to take. Any projects you want to check out specifically on your end, T-Shroom? Looks like Tesla is up this morning.
Yeah, I mean, just looking across the screen. I mean, the big thing is that we're not seeing a huge sell-off. You know, there was a chance that investors lost a lot of confidence in the future of the United States last night.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's good to see that is not the case, right? We're not seeing big sell-off. What is that? That's MSTR.
This is MicroStrategy seeing a little bit in the hourly chart, of down about 4% almost on the hourly chart to open this morning. Coin, which is of course Coinbase, not anything major, but a small bearish candle right there. Mm-hmm. Apple, after having a big opening, so they have a gap, Apple has been falling since that opening. If I come back over, let's check in, because again, we saw gold was rallying and then gold started falling. Let's go back and look at what is Bitcoin doing. Bitcoin continues to stay very, very neutral in the last hour. Again, kind of ranging here. We got up to about, let's see, before that, we got up to roughly 61,800, fell back down. We've been as low as 61,200, give or take. We're kind of just ranging between 61.3 and 61.4 now. So nothing necessarily overwhelmingly bullish or bearish. And again, while we see some early signs in the stock market, again, I'm watching what's happening here with the S&P 500. Turned bullish even after the bullish open. That's positive. The NASDAQ is bullish right now. The Dow Jones is actually pretty stinking bullish. Yes, there's a couple. Meta falling here. Let's see, was Microsoft falling? Microsoft kind of neutral, but MicroStrategy taking a little bit of an L to start the day. Coinbase taking a little bit of an L to start the day, but at the same time, nothing crazy, nothing massive going on. We will check back in and wrap this up at 3 p.m. later on today when we go live for our Friday show. But that kind of wraps up the show this morning. Again, we've had a very, very busy last 12 hours. What's the ultimate thought? The ultimate thought is nothing new has happened. We're not crazy bullish. We're not crazy bearish. We're going to have to continue to wait for more catalysts to come in before we can make a big decision. What's our takeaway? Unless something changes, be prepared for more boring sideways action for a couple more months. The bull market is coming back, though, people. Do not lose faith. Do not lose hope. This actually is very normal compared to historical movements. It just means we have to be patient for a little while longer. With that said, though, on your way out, smash the like button if you enjoyed our conversation today. Hit that subscribe button as well. Come back at 3 p.m. for our afternoon live show. We'll cover more altcoins and more data on news that comes out as data develops. With that said, love you guys. We'll see you today in the afternoon. Adios.
Trying to make paper, turn that better to cake. Money like Lego, connect the dots, stack bank. We are investing bros. We are investing bros. Army pipe, lethal on trade. Entries and exits, worthy of praise. Tim, the professor, the TA. Shout it out loud on the PA. T-Shrooms news, got the word. Doing better than what he deserves. Beamer, leave no evidence. Soon fly coop with his dividend. Trying to make paper, turn that better to cake. Money like Lego, connect the dots, stack bank. We are investing bros. We are investing bros.